I used to be neighbors with a friend and her 2 kids, 4 and 9 at the time. We lived in an ex-retirement community that had just dropped its age restriction. People die in retirement communities. One night when the girls were coming home late, they passed a median with a creepy female figure on it. My friend said the hairs on her arm raised, but she tried to pretend to not notice so the kids wouldn't get freaked out. The younger child waved, and the older child just started screaming, "It's her! It's her!" I didn't hear about this story until a week or so later when I kicked in her front door, because both my husband and I saw a strange woman through their window. The window I saw her through led right into the room of the door I kicked in. I scared the life out of their poor dog, but no one was there. He says she was still in his direct line of sight when I burst in, but he blinked and she was gone. We helped them move a few weeks later. According to the kids, she'd wander into their rooms at night, and she was scary, but not aggressive. For some god-awful reason, they eventually left the state to move into a well-known haunted apartment building that used to be a hospital that got shut down. I looked it up, and yeah, it's one of that state's top haunted buildings. Why the fuck you'd move your child into a notoriously haunted building when you believe your whole family is sensitive to spirits is beyond me. They ended up having to break their lease because the kids were severely affected by the increasingly aggressive encounters. 2 years ago, my fiancé took a job that required him to stay at a remote camp for weeks at a time. That meant I was home alone, just me and our Great Dane. He's a huge dog, brave looking, but strangely terrified of stairs, especially the ones leading to the basement. No matter what I did, he would never go down there. I always thought it was just his size or awkwardness. I didn't think much of it. One night I was watching TV when I noticed something strange. My dog stood at the top of the basement stairs completely still. His ears were perked up. All the hair along his back was raised. Then he started to growl. A deep, low, threatening growl that sent a chill down my spine. He wouldn't look away from the basement. It was dead silent downstairs. The light was off. I felt my heart start to race. The air in the house suddenly felt colder. He growled again, louder this time. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep calm. Trying to lighten the mood, I walked over and stood beside him at the top of the steps. I looked down into the dark and, half joking, shouted, "Whatever the fuck you are, just leave us alone. You don't pay enough bills here to be freaking anybody the fuck out." I chuckled to myself. Then I heard it. A voice, calm and clear, right behind me said, "Okay, fine, I'll go." It came from the wall. That wall behind me. Completely solid drywall. There's no room back there, no vents, no way anyone could be hiding. My dog screamed, a full yelp. He jumped away from the stairs and ran behind the couch like a terrified puppy. I stood frozen. I couldn't breathe. My skin went cold, and the hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. I grabbed my phone and called my neighbor. Her husband came over within minutes. He checked every room, the basement, the closets, even the ceiling crawl space. There was nothing. No signs of anyone. No way in or out. I didn't sleep that night. I kept every light in the house on. I clutched an aluminum bat in my lap, wide awake until sunrise. My dog wouldn't move from my side. He never went near the basement again, and neither did I. One night in college, my girlfriend and I were asleep in our small apartment. Everything was quiet until I woke up to her screaming. It wasn't just a normal scream. It was the kind of scream you only hear in horror movies. High-pitched, terrified, like someone was being murdered. I jumped up, heart racing, completely alert in a second. That's when I saw her, an old hag. She was standing right beside our bed. Her face was twisted and wrinkled, with hollow eyes locked onto my girlfriend. My girlfriend was sitting up, frozen in fear. I didn't think, I just reacted. I leapt out of bed and swung my arm at the hag, trying to knock her away. But as I moved, She vanished. The lights came on. There was no old woman, just a stool by the bed, and my girlfriend's black coat draped over it. My hands were shaking. I laughed nervously, telling myself I must have imagined it. I didn't say anything to her. We both went back to sleep, pretending it was nothing. But the next morning, everything got weirder. I asked her why she had moved the stool next to the bed. She looked confused, said she didn't move it. I hadn't either. That stool had always been in the kitchen. I then asked why her black jacket was out. It was the middle of summer. She froze, said she hadn't touched it. We lived alone. That's when she finally told me what she had seen. She said she woke up because she felt something breathing on her face. Hot, heavy, slow. When she opened her eyes, an old woman was leaning directly over her. The same hag I had seen, but she thought it was just a nightmare. She hadn't mentioned it, assuming her mind was playing tricks. But we had seen the same thing at the exact same time, and neither of us told the other until the next morning. We both believed it had to be some shared illusion, a shadow, a trick of the light, a bad dream. But how could two people have the same hallucination? Nothing else strange ever happened in that apartment. But that one night, it still haunts us. We never figured out what we saw, and we've never slept the same since. My sister was getting married, and she rented an old plantation house for the wedding. It was beautiful, but it felt strange the moment we arrived. The house was huge. A few bedrooms were downstairs, a few more upstairs, and most of the top floor was taken up by a massive lounge. My parents stayed in one room downstairs. So did my sister and her fiancé. Upstairs, my uncle and aunt had a room, as well as my other sister and another couple. I didn't have a room, so I slept alone in the lounge upstairs. That room was huge, maybe 30 by 40 feet, empty and quiet. I set up my blankets in the corner and tried to sleep. Around 2:50 a.m., I suddenly woke up. My heart was pounding. I felt like something was watching me. I didn't have my glasses on, so everything was blurry. But I saw it anyway. A shadow. It was tall, but not solid. Just a dark shape moving across the far end of the room. It moved slowly, like it was gliding. Then it disappeared into the corner and blended with the darkness. I was frozen. I couldn't move. I didn't blink. I just lay there, breathing hard. After a few minutes, I finally dared to check my phone. I stared at the screen, trying to calm down. About 10 minutes later, I heard my aunt and uncle talking in their room. I felt less alone, but I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. In the morning, I went to the kitchen and saw my mum. I told her about what I saw. She gave me a weird look, but before she could say anything, my sister walked in. Her face was pale. She said she woke up at 3 a.m. because something kept pulling the covers off her bed, over and over again. She thought it was a dream, but it felt too real. Then my aunt and uncle came into the kitchen. My aunt looked shaken. She said she woke up around 3 a.m. and saw a shadow floating above her bed. None of us had spoken before. None of us had shared our stories, but all of us experienced something. At the exact same time, that house was hiding something. And for one night, it let us see it. About 25 years ago, my wife and I were caretakers for an old house. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Quiet hallways, creaky floors, the kind of place that feels lived in, but harmless. But the cellar was different. Every time we walked up the stairs and reached for the light switch, an overwhelming feeling would come over us. Pure dread, like something was just behind us, ready to grab us the moment the light went out. That fear was always there, every single time. The rest of the house didn't feel haunted, but that cellar stayed in our minds. We lived a quiet routine, and beside our bed was an old-fashioned wind-up alarm clock, the kind with loud ticking and twin bells on top. To set the alarm, you had to move a small third hand to the desired time. Ours was always set to 6 a.m., never changed, never touched. It was a mechanical thing. You couldn't set it by accident. Then one night, out of nowhere, the alarm went off at 2 a.m. The bells rang so loud, it jolted both of us awake. Before I could move, I saw it. A small figure, maybe 2 feet tall, dash out of the room. It was fast, too fast to be a child or a shadow. I froze, my heart racing, unsure of what I had just witnessed. But then my wife screamed, "Did you just see that thing?" We stared at each other, both pale, both terrified. She described the same thing I saw. A tiny, twisted creature that looked like some kind of gremlin, deformed, hunched, and wrong. We turned to the alarm clock, and that's when it hit us. The alarm hand had been moved. It was no longer set to 6 a.m. It had been physically turned to 2 a.m. Exactly the time it went off. There's no way that could have happened by itself. Someone, or something, had changed it. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. After that, nothing else happened. No more figures, no more alarms. But that heavy, watching feeling coming up from the cellar never left. It stayed there, every night, pressing against our backs as we climbed the stairs. We never saw the creature again, but I still remember its shape, the way it ran, and the sound of that alarm cutting through the dark. Whatever was in that house, it knew we were there, and it wanted us to know it too. I went to college in Providence. My dorm room was shared with my roommate, featuring beds on opposite sides of the room and desks at the foot of each bed, which is the usual dorm setup. Anyway, my boyfriend and I were hanging out in my room one day, and he was lying on my bed. I was up next to the bed and bent over to grab something. I heard him scream and freak out, holding his eyes, not exaggerating, and he wouldn't tell me why. Eventually he tells me that when I bent over, he saw a shadow behind me that actually kind of looked like him, and it freaked him out. He had an afro, so the silhouette would have been pretty distinctive. We didn't really talk about it afterwards, and never told my roommate. She wasn't in the room. A couple of weeks later, I'm asleep in bed with my boyfriend. I wake up in the middle of the night to my roommate packing a bag, clearly panicked. She kind of rushed out of the room and didn't see me awake, so I didn't say anything. The next morning I see her and ask her why she rushed out of the room in the middle of the night. She then tells me she woke up in the middle of the night and saw my boyfriend sitting at my desk and asked him why he was up. She then saw my boyfriend sleeping next to me. She believed in ghost stuff, so she freaked and left. It genuinely unsettled me because we had not mentioned the look-alike that my boyfriend had seen to her, and it appeared that she had witnessed the same figure. Living in RI made me see some weird shit. After my grandpa died, my dad and I had to clean out his old house. It was quiet, cold, and filled with memories. We never heard his voice or anything like that, but what we did hear was worse. Whenever it was just the two of us in the house, strange things would happen upstairs. Cabinet doors creaked open slowly, then slammed shut. Sometimes we heard doors opening on their own. It was always upstairs. It didn't happen when more people were around, just when it was my dad and me. The first time it happened, we ignored it. We told ourselves it was nothing and kept cleaning. But then, about an hour in, we heard a loud slam. It was like a door had been kicked shut, hard. My dad and I froze, looked at each other without saying a word, and both bolted out the front door. We didn't even try to check it out. We just knew we had to leave. The next morning, we had to go back. Movers were coming. I was terrified. That night, I couldn't sleep. My dad put on a CD of Disney songs to help my younger siblings fall asleep. I stayed up, listening to The Bare Necessities play softly while I stared at the ceiling, praying I wouldn't hear anything. I was trying to pretend it didn't happen, but deep down, I knew something was wrong in that house. The following day, curiosity got the best of us. My dad and I finally decided to go upstairs. We didn't want to, but we had to know. what we found made my stomach drop. Every single cabinet, drawer, and door upstairs was standing wide open. They had all been closed the day before, locked shut. There were no open windows, no wind. No one else had been in the house. But everything was open, like something had gone through every inch of the upstairs, searching. It didn't feel like a person had done it. It felt like something unseen had been moving around, watching us, testing us. I remember standing there, my skin crawling, feeling like we were not alone. That moment burned into my memory. It was the most terrifying, confusing thing I've ever experienced. We left that house as fast as we could. I still don't like to talk about it, but I'll never forget it. I was 17 when my dad remarried and had a baby with his new wife. I didn't like being around them, so I usually stayed away as much as I could. One afternoon after school, I came home, opened the door, and shouted, "I'm home!" I could hear my baby sister crying upstairs, loud, non-stop crying. It echoed through the house. I rolled my eyes, annoyed, and walked downstairs to drop off my backpack. I wasn't ready to deal with the noise yet. I needed a second to breathe. After a minute, I gathered myself and went back upstairs to see what was going on. But when I reached the top step, it was silent, completely silent. No crying, no movement, nothing. I felt something was off right away. The air felt heavier. The house didn't feel empty, but it also didn't feel right. I called out, "Hello?" My voice sounded small. There was no answer. I walked slowly toward the back bedroom, the same one I thought the crying was coming from just moments before. I pushed open the door. It was dark, empty. I checked every room. No one was there. No sign of my dad, his wife, or the baby. Just silence. The kind of silence that presses in on you, that makes your skin crawl. I felt cold, even though it was warm outside. The hallway seemed longer than usual. The shadows in the corners looked deeper. I started to feel watched. My hands were shaking when I took out my phone. I called my dad and asked, "Where did you guys go?" He sounded casual, calm. "We're in the city having a late lunch," he said. "Why? Everything okay?" The city was a 40-minute drive away. My heart dropped. I had heard the baby crying with my own ears. It wasn't my imagination. It was real. But now, no one was home. They hadn't been all day. I didn't know what to think. I left the house and waited outside until they came back. I never told them what happened, but I never forgot the sound of that baby crying upstairs in an empty house. It still haunts me. I don't know what I heard, or what was pretending to be my sister, but something was there, and it knew I was home. My brother and I had just gotten to my house around 5 p.m. on a weekday. We are both adults. I have a teenage kid who is usually home around that time. I have a pretty big house, so I yelled from the kitchen, "Hey, Ash, come eat with us." She had just gotten out of school, so I assumed her grandma had already dropped her off. We both hear a response, something like, "Okay, come." I don't remember what she said because we weren't even paying much attention. Well, 5 to 10 minutes pass, and she never comes. I go check in her room. Nobody is there. I figure she's playing a prank. I check a few other rooms. Nothing. I call her cell, and it turns out she's been at her grandmother's house the whole time. My brother and I just look at each other. I asked him if he heard her respond when I had called out to her. He nods his head and looks genuinely freaked out. To this day, I still have no idea what it was that caused his reaction. We are the only house in the new subdivision. The closest neighbor is maybe 200 yards away. My in-laws are deeply religious. They came and blessed the room. Oh, and my daughter has said she's had a few weird things happen in her room. Mainly anime figurines falling from their shelves and stuff. She said she may have seen a shadowy figure, but she's not sure if she was daydreaming, as she had stayed up very late. But just some odd stuff. We never told her about what we heard. My mum and I were chatting in the kitchen when someone opened the front door, came in, closed it, walked to my brother's room, and shut that door. We both called out, "Hi," and Chris did that teenager grunt that sounds a bit like a greeting. From our angle, we couldn't see the person, but the footsteps and the voice were unmistakably Chris's. We carried on talking until about 10 minutes later, when the front door opened and closed. My brother's footsteps went into his room, and he shut the door. We looked at each other, and my mum said, "How and why did he do that?" Mum and I knocked on Chris's door, and there he is, taking his jacket off. We asked why he'd come home, left, presumably via the window, then come back within minutes, and he had absolutely no idea what we were talking about. He'd only just walked in, that minute once. None of us believe in anything supernatural, so we searched his room thoroughly, because someone had definitely gone in there and vocally answered us. We found nothing and no one. There are a couple of other stories like this, all involving something that someone thinks is my brother, until it later becomes apparent that it can't have been. A friend who used to sleep over was so scared by the fake Chris that he only visited during the day. Like I said, I don't believe in anything paranormal, so I assume it's just that we're expecting him to be somewhere and therefore somehow subconsciously convince ourselves he's arrived before he actually has. But this incident was particularly weird because we both heard him and we both spoke to him, and he answered.